Hello, today I want to talk to you about managing mental health in the workplace. I was working with a client recently to help them improve their well-being strategy, and I got talking to one of the managers, Laura, and Laura told me a story that may resonate with you. Basically, she inherited a staff member called Phil from a previous line manager. Now, the previous line manager had managed Phil for a number of years, and Phil developed a mental health condition. And the original line manager responded by just allowing Phil the discretion to come into work when he felt that he could, and also the manager didn't worry about Phil meeting his work output or his deadlines. Now, if this had been a short-term response to retain Phil in the workplace as opposed to him going off sick, that would possibly have worked and possibly been quite helpful. However, this situation continued for 18 months. And when Laura took over management of Phil, it caused her tremendous problems. One thing that happened was because Laura wanted to support Phil in moving towards his normal working hours and his normal working output, it created a lot of additional pressure for him because he'd been used to doing his own thing for some time. It also put a lot of pressure on Laura because Phil resisted her attempts to try and support him back into a normal work output. Now, sadly, as you can imagine, this didn't go particularly well, and it didn't have a happy ending. Phil actually left the organisation, quite disgruntled, and Laura was equally disgruntled and felt that the organisation had let her down in some way. Now, don't get me wrong, this was a very good organisation that normally dealt very well with well-being and any staff issues. But it was a small organisation with a small HR department that relied very heavily on its managers to discharge their role in mental health successfully. And it just goes to show that one weak link can break a chain. So, what were the issues then? There were a number of issues in this scenario. The first one was that the first line manager did not provide adequate support to protect both Phil and the organisation. The situation went on for 18 months, and during this time Phil was not encouraged in any way to return to any sort of normal working pattern or hours. And the situation just drifted on, so there was no real sort of recovery plan for Phil. Also, Phil was, Phil was a bit of a difficult character, a difficult personality. And what he tended to do was accuse his colleagues of discriminating against him in some way. And the colleagues became very frightened to work with him. And unfortunately, the organisation allowed this personality difficulty, shall we say, to cloud their judgment of the real issue, which was about supporting Phil and managing his performance in the workplace. And as you can imagine, the situation caused quite a bit of distress, shall we say, for the colleagues, and also additional pressure both for Phil and for Laura. And I guess another issue is that inadvertently the organisation allowed Phil's previous manager to avoid his managerial responsibilities with regard to Phil. And this meant that the organisation lost productivity not only from Phil but perhaps from a little bit of Laura with the extra effort she had to put in, and also possibly from the colleagues who were struggling to relate well to Phil. So, what can we learn from this story then? I think the first thing is to recognise that managers do vary in their level of social skills and their ability to hold difficult conversations with staff members. Also, there's still a lot of stigma around mental health, and some managers are actually frightened to really address a mental health condition. They're frightened that they're going to make things worse, that they might say the wrong thing. However, not addressing mental health conditions early on actually makes things more difficult in the long run and can lead to higher absence levels in the longer term. And I think staff with difficult personalities make management more of a challenge, but it's important to remain focused on the support that the individual needs to enable them to carry out their work effectively. And also organisations need to work closely with managers who are managing people with mental health conditions and support them. So I guess in terms of recommendations, if you find yourself in this position, what I would say to you is, first of all, do ensure that your managers are trained and confident in recognising and addressing mental health conditions. The training should concentrate really on anxiety and depression, which are the most common mental health conditions that your managers are likely to experience in the workplace or to come into contact with. And it should focus very much on managing them in a work context. Mental health conditions, like physical health conditions, are better if they're treated early. So do encourage your managers to bite the bullet, hold a supportive conversation and support the staff member appropriately to the right professional help. And I guess another thing to bear in mind is when managers are managing people with health conditions, it can put additional stress on them. So it's important to be mindful of their mental health and offer them additional support. If you have the ability to offer HR or occupational health support, that's great. If you're a small organisation and you can't do this, if you have limited resources, then encourage your managers to buddy up and support each other. And there are resources and tools available to help managers manage staff and support staff with mental health conditions. So do make sure your managers are aware of what's out there to help them, and keep watching this space.